Welcome back to Movie Spy. Okay, so Fallout Season 2 just casually dropped one of the most disturbing reveals in the entire franchise, smiled at us like everything was normal, and then walked away whistling while Vault-Tec quietly prepared to ruin humanity again. Today we're talking about Vault-Tec's so-called future enterprise ventures, why Phase 2 should absolutely terrify you, and how Fallout Season the Second of may have secretly confirmed that the Forced Evolutionary Virus was always the endgame. And yes, this changes everything. Let's get into it. At this point, trusting Vault-Tec is like trusting a feral ghoul with your lunch money. You know how it ends. Best case scenario, you're robbed. Worst case scenario, you're turned into a mutant science experiment that screams in a cave for 200 years. And yet, Fallout Season 2 keeps reminding us that the most dangerous people in this universe aren't raiders, Deathclaws, or even nukes. They're middle managers. Specifically, Bud Askins and his horrifying collection of polite, well-dressed sociopaths frozen in Vault 31. Now, on the surface, Vaults 32 and 33 look like your standard Vault-Tec community building nonsense. Smiling residents, structured society, awkward meetings, slightly too much enthusiasm for rules. But as Fallout has taught us over and over again, if a vault looks functional, that just means the experiment hasn't kicked in yet. And Season 2 strongly suggests it finally has. Let's talk about Norm MacLean for a second, because Norm might be the only person in this entire operation with a functioning brain. Norm isn't loud, he isn't powerful, he doesn't have power armor or a cool nickname. What he does have is something far more dangerous to Vault-Tec curiosity. Norm wakes up a bunch of junior Vault-Tec executives from Vault 31, which is already insane when you think about it. Vault-Tec didn't freeze farmers. They didn't freeze artists. They froze corporate loyalists. People whose entire identity was yes sir and for the shareholders. That alone tells you these vaults matter. Vault-Tec doesn't preserve employees for sentimental reasons. They preserve assets. As Norm starts leading these people, he's not really leading, he's observing, he's listening. And eventually, he stumbles into the most chilling conversation in the entire season, Ronnie McCurtry. If you ever needed proof that evil doesn't need to shout, Ronnie is it. He doesn't threaten Norm, he doesn't monologue, he just casually asks if it's time for Phase 2, like he's checking if the office coffee machine needs refilling. And that's when the red flags start detonating like mini nukes. Ronnie talks about future enterprise ventures like it's common knowledge. He mentions investors. He mentions meetings. He straight up says this was the whole plan for Vaults 32 and 33. Not part of the plan, not a side project. The plan. That alone is horrifying. But then he drops the line that should make every Fallout fan sit up straight. Phase 2 is very important to the experiment. Vault-Tec's favorite word, the word that has ruined more lives than radiation ever did. Now here's where Fallout Season 2 gets clever. Because future enterprise ventures sounds like meaningless corporate garbage. It sounds like something you'd skim past in a PowerPoint. But Fallout doesn't waste names. Ever. Future. Enterprise. Ventures. FEV. Yeah, that FEV. The Forced Evolutionary Virus. If that acronym didn't immediately make your skin crawl, congratulations. You haven't played enough Fallout. FEV is one of the most catastrophic inventions in the entire franchise. Created before the Great War by Vault-Tec, the virus was designed to improve humanity. And by improve, they meant forcibly rewrite DNA until something useful or horrifying came out the other side. Super mutants? FEV. Grotesque biological weapons? FEV. Entire factions built on hatred of non-humans? Also FEV. This virus doesn't cure. It doesn't heal. It mutates. It overwrites. It turns people into something else and calls it progress. And Bud Askins worked at Vault-Tec. That detail is not subtle. Fallout Season 2 might as well be flashing a neon sign that says, "Hey, remember this nightmare?" Bud didn't just stumble into Vault-Tec. He came from the company that helped invent power armor and the virus that broke the world in slow motion. And now his personal assistant is casually talking about Phase 2 of an experiment involving 2 vaults full of unsuspecting people. That's not coincidence, that's planning. Now let's talk about Vaults 32 and 33 themselves, because they're not random. Vault-Tec experiments are never random. Some vaults were designed to fail immediately, others were long-term psychological torture chambers. But these vaults, they're slow burns. These people lived relatively normal lives underground. Generations passed, communities formed, trust developed. And only after Reclamation Day, after the vaults opened, after hope was restored, does Phase 2 appear to begin. That timing matters. Because Fallout Season 2 is strongly implying that Vault-Tec wanted people stable before breaking them. They needed baseline humanity, healthy populations, emotional bonds. Then you introduce the variable. And what variable is worse than FEV? The virus doesn't just create monsters. It erases identity, it strips away choice. It replaces who you were with what Vault-Tec needs you to be. That's why Ronnie calling it the whole plan is so disturbing. These vaults weren't designed for survival. They were designed for transformation. And here's the truly terrifying part. The people inside have no idea. They think they're rebuilding civilization. They think they're pioneers. Meanwhile, Vault-Tec executives are watching from the shadows, waiting to flip a switch labeled Phase 2. Now let's talk about Hank's mysterious suitcase. Because Fallout loves dangling objects like loaded guns on a table. Stephanie's obsession with that suitcase isn't random. Vault-Tec never wants souvenirs. They want assets. If that suitcase contains an FEV strain, everything clicks into place. That's why Vault 31 people care. That's why Phase 2 requires authorization. That's why this experiment needed investors. Because FEV isn't cheap. It's not something you casually store in a broom closet. And Fallout has already shown us that different FEV strains exist. Some create super mutants. Some cause subtle changes. Some take time. What if Vault-Tec developed a strain meant for controlled evolution? Not instant monsters, not Hulk-sized brutes. Something slower. Something adaptive. Something that turns communities into something new. Now let's step back and ask the big question, why? Why would Vault-Tec do this? And the answer is painfully simple. Control. Vault-Tec never believed humanity could survive on its own. Their entire philosophy was about managing chaos. Vaults weren't shelters. They were laboratories. And FEV was the ultimate tool. If you can rewrite humanity, you don't have to rebuild society. You design it. This also reframes the entire Fallout universe in a darker way. The Great War wasn't just the end. It was the beginning of Vault-Tec's real work. Surface civilization died so underground experiments could thrive. And now, 200 years later, Phase 2 is ready. Norm realizing this puts him in extreme danger. Because Vault-Tec doesn't tolerate variables, and Norm is becoming one. He's not part of the plan. He's asking questions. He's connecting dots. And in Fallout, people who ask too many questions don't get promoted. They disappear. Now let's talk character implications, because this reveal doesn't just affect Vault dwellers. It reshapes the entire Fallout story. The Brotherhood of Steel? Their obsession with purity makes more sense if FEV was always meant to reshape humanity. Ghouls? Victims of radiation, yes, but also reminders of uncontrolled mutation. Super mutants? Proof that FEV doesn't just change bodies, it erases cultures. And Vault-Tec watched all of it happen. This also casts Bud Askins as one of the most quietly evil characters in the franchise. He's not a mad scientist screaming about progress. He's worse. He's organized. He planned this centuries in advance. He made sure loyal employees survived. He ensured continuity. He treated humanity like a long-term project. And Fallout Season 2 is finally pulling the curtain back. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with vaults full of people who don't know they're about to become test subjects. A virus with a history of horror. And a corporation that has never once shown remorse. Phase 2 isn't coming. It's already here. And the scariest part, Vault-Tec doesn't see this as evil. They see it as success. So when Fallout Season 2 smiles politely and talks about future enterprise ventures, remember what that really means. Forced evolution, no consent. And if that doesn't make you rethink every vault door you've ever seen open, nothing will. Because the real apocalypse wasn't the bombs. It was the plan that survived them. And if you think this is where it ends, trust me, it's not. There are still secrets buried in these vaults, and some of them might be worse than FEV itself. So keep your eyes open, Question everything, and maybe ask yourself one thing before the next episode drops. If Vault-Tec really wanted to save humanity, why do they keep trying to replace it?